On March 27, 2022, at exactly 8:20 p.m. inside the Dolby Theater, the room went quiet in a way Hollywood rarely allows. A single sound cut through the applause, sharp and unmistakable. In that instant, everything Will Smith had built for 3 decades shifted, and the silence that followed would last far longer than anyone expected. What happened on that stage was seen by millions. What happened after, in the hours and months no camera captured, is the part that still refuses to settle. Tonight, we're not revisiting the slap, we're examining the decision that followed it. The choice to stay seated, the choice to accept the Oscar, and the long, deliberate quiet that came after, because sometimes the most powerful moment isn't the one that explodes, it's the one that doesn't. That night was supposed to be a victory lap. Reports suggest Will Smith entered the ceremony as a near lock for Best Actor, the role that critics had already framed as his coronation. The industry had spent years debating whether he was overdue. He knew it. They knew it. The script was written. Until it wasn't. When Chris Rock delivered the joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, the room laughed. Then the laugh thinned. Then Will Smith stood up. Most people remember the shock. Fewer remember the math. In that walk from his seat to the stage and back, 1,000 consequences lined up in front of him. Security didn't rush in. Producers didn't cut to commercial. The show continued, as if frozen by disbelief. And Will Smith sat back down. That choice is where the story really begins. Behind the scenes, according to multiple post-event reports, Academy leadership debated removing him from the building. The authority existed. The will did not. The show was live. The moment was already viral, and removing the night's presumptive winner would have turned chaos into collapse. So nothing happened. Not then. Less than 40 minutes later, Will Smith stood on that same stage again, holding the Oscar he had chased for most of his career. He apologized to the Academy. He apologized to his fellow nominees. He did not apologize to Chris Rock. That omission became a second shockwave. In the days that followed, outrage hardened into something more permanent. Studio executives went quiet. Projects paused. Public support fractured into camps that no longer spoke the same language. Some saw a man defending his family. Others saw violence televised and normalized. Both sides dug in. The middle disappeared. And Will Smith vanished. No interviews. No press tour. No carefully managed redemption circuit. For months, the most bankable movie star in the world said almost nothing. When a brief written apology finally appeared, it was measured, restrained, and late enough to anger everyone equally. Here's the uncomfortable question Hollywood never asks out loud. Was the silence strategic? Or was it paralysis? Because in this town, silence is rarely accidental. For decades, Will Smith had been known as the safest bet in the room. Not the most daring, not the most controversial. Safe, dependable. A global brand built on likability, discipline, and control. He didn't stumble into superstardom. He engineered it, which is why that night felt so jarring. Not because a celebrity lost his temper, but because Will Smith did. In private, according to people familiar with his career decisions, Smith had long worried about perception. He curated his image with precision, often passing on darker roles, often choosing projects that reinforced a specific emotional contract with the audience. He was the star you could trust. That trust cracked in seconds. The Academy's response was swift but carefully worded. A 10-year ban from the Oscars. No criminal charges. No lifetime exile. Enough punishment to signal consequence. Not enough to end a legacy. Studios followed with quiet recalibrations. Films weren't canceled so much as delayed. Conversations paused. Momentum slowed. And still, Will Smith said very little. This is where opinion enters the room, and I'll be clear about it. In my view, the silence did more damage than the slap. Not because people needed groveling, but because Hollywood runs on narrative, and by stepping away, Will Smith surrendered control of his. In the vacuum, others spoke for him. Commentators, comedians, think pieces, hashtags. His moment was reframed again and again, detached from context, frozen in replay. The man who once dominated opening weekends became a punchline, then a case study. Months later, when he finally sat down to address it on camera, the tone was calm, almost clinical. He spoke of reflection, of growth, of understanding the harm. It was thoughtful, it was sober, and it felt too many, too late.
Why wait? Reports suggest Smith was advised to disappear, to let the storm burn itself out, to avoid saying the wrong thing while emotions were raw. That advice has saved careers before. It has also buried them, because the industry didn't just want remorse. It wanted reassurance that this was an anomaly, that the contract was still intact. Instead, Hollywood was left to wonder whether the most controlled star it ever produced had finally slipped his own grip. Another question lingered beneath the headlines. Why did he stay seated that night? Some insiders argue that standing up again, walking out, would have confirmed guilt in the court of public opinion. Others believe he was in shock, locked into the machinery of the ceremony, moving on instinct. There are even unconfirmed theories that he was encouraged to remain to avoid derailing the broadcast further. Whatever the reason, the image endures. The man who struck someone on live television then accepted the highest honor of his profession minutes later. That contradiction became impossible to untangle. Jada Pinkett Smith, for her part, broke her own silence months later, framing the incident within a longer conversation about boundaries, respect, and healing. It clarified some things. It complicated others. The public, already exhausted, split again. And still, Will Smith did not rush back. Projects eventually re-emerged. A delayed film here. A cautious announcement there. But something had shifted. The old certainty was gone. Every return was framed as a test. Every appearance weighed. Here's another honest observation. Hollywood forgives success faster than it forgives disruption. The slap didn't just offend sensibilities. It broke the illusion that the show could always control its stars. That made people nervous. When Will Smith finally returned to award stages years later, the applause was real but restrained, respectful, guarded. The industry welcomed him back the way it welcomes someone who knows they've been away too long. Not punished, not absolved, just changed. What's rarely discussed is the cost of that change on Smith himself. By all accounts, he retreated into work, into family, into introspection. Friends have described a quieter man, more deliberate, less interested in dominance and more in distance. Whether that's growth or grief depends on who you ask. The legacy question remains unresolved. Will this be remembered as a singular lapse in a monumental career, or the moment that permanently altered how audiences see him? The answer may depend on something still ahead. Not a movie, not a speech, but another choice. Silence can be a shield. It can also be a sentence. In the end, Will Smith didn't just lose control on that stage. He lost control of the story afterward. And in Hollywood, that might be the most dangerous loss of all. So now, with time past and the noise quieter, one question still hangs in the air. If he could relive that night, would he change what he did on stage or what he did after? If this story made you think, take a second to like the video. Subscribe to Hollywood Unsealed for more deep investigations into the moments they don't replay. Share it with someone who still debates that night. And let us know in the comments what you think the real turning point was.